in these situations. In fact, they have probably the most control because the sub is when they say stop.
Yeah,
the sub,
they're the ones that can go, hey,
that's exactly
done now.
right.
Okay, cool, finished.
Yeah, so the sub is the one who says when enough is enough, and that is really strictly listened to. So, you've probably read in the 50 Shades of Grey, the colour codes, rah. That's actually a real thing, the colour codes. Yeah. So, orange is for when you're starting to get a bit far, but it's okay for now. Yeah. And red is when you've crossed the line and you need to stop immediately. But
there's no real, it's all based on the person, isn't it? Because, one person could, the orange could be butt plugs where another person's orange is a hand spank or something.
Absolutely.
So it bases on person by person.
Absolutely. There's no set rules on to what your limit should be, and don't ever let anyone say that you're being too weak. You need to go by what you feel.
So is that where soft and hard limits come into it?
Absolutely, yeah. So soft and hard limits is very much similar to... So soft and hard limits is something you would talk about before you entered into the act, where your dom would ask you what he would like to do, and then the sub would say yes or no. So say, for instance...
so that's like the contract scene.
Contracts...
In the 50 Shades, how he says,
yeah.
this is what I want to do, and she goes, what are butt plugs? What's this? No fisting, no.
Yeah.
That kind of thing?
That's exactly what that is. Yeah, so for her...
Texas set awkwardly to see just says butt plugs and fisting. She's like, no, I'm good.
No, fisting is what put me in.
Yeah, so example, in the movie 50 Shades of Grey, we'll use it as an example because everyone does know about it. Fisting was her hard limit. That means no, basically. Yeah. And if that was to ever happen, that would pretty much end that sub-dom relationship. That would never continue because he's broken that allowance and that trust. But I think it ends up happening in the later
We'll wait for the sequels as well. Yeah.
But it's funny how the books develop over
They get dirtier and dirtier.
They do.
Because obviously, there's one scene in that fucking movie where she's on a period and he pulls the tampon out and, someone wrote a, what is it, like a meme about it? Flinging blood mice everywhere, because, so the big thing is Christian doesn't have any respect, and he doesn't appreciate it, and he's a manipulative fuck.
That's where you basically referred to it as almost as rape, as opposed to...
Oh, absolutely. I would classify that book as more rape fetish than anything. A lot of people call it mummy porn, and that's another thing is mums really dug it, because... it is such a fantasy to most people, so mums really got into that book,
But this is a very interesting podcast, very eye-opening. We're still going to keep talking. I just wanted to say that right now because it's actually, I don't know anything about that. I've had a couple of questions I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
It's actually nice to know someone like you who's been through all that stuff. And it's actually pretty cool to come onto a mic and actually chat about it. So
I'm not embarrassed by it, and
Well, here's a question. Why should you?
That's right.
Why should you?
A lot of
people get off on lesbian porn, midget porn, fucking amputee midgets from Guatemala, whatever.
Grown babies.
Yeah,
furries. Whatever gets you off, gets you off.
And
that's
you see all
fun
of that
dandy.
in the BDSM lifestyle. And when you're there, so this is something that you asked off mic earlier, is if if you see someone or whatever, if you see someone at a meetup or a munch, and a munch is like a gathering typically at a coffee shop where no one's in outfit, they're just there to catch up, and that's usually where you would meet a potential dom or sub, and that's where you would just talk. It's nothing to do with, hey, let's go fuck, or let's go try a scene, or let's go
I want you to whip me right now, let's go.
It's never like that. And typically they can be hosted at people's houses, which are again strictly invite, or their public openings, which are at a coffee shop. But that doesn't mean you can just waltz up. Typically you have to ask the group's leader if you can go, and typically they'll want you to go with someone who's already in that group. So
that's understandable, because you need to keep you need to keep people's confidences and privacy.
Oh, absolutely. You can't just say, if you see someone there, if Gareth was there, for example, and he was dressed up in that particular role that he wants to be, you can't just say, oh, hey, Gareth, and shout it across the hall.
Yeah.
You can't do that. A lot of people do go by aliases. So, for example, my alias used to be D-Bucks, and there's no record of that online anymore. So you can most certainly try and find it. But that is who I was, and anyone who was there, whether they knew me personally or not, called me D-Bucks. They did not use Natalie or Nat. So.
Yeah. Which is kind of cool in a way as well, because it's as you said, it's that whole
you get to choose who you want to be.
Yeah. You also you don't want to be, as you said at the beginning, you don't rock up to someone and caress their titties in the main street. So you're not going to sit there and go, "Hey Nat, I really like the way that I sucked the butt plugs in you yesterday." Hey, you're not going to do that shit because you'd be showing the door and just get the fuck out.
It's usually a very nice conversation at these kinds of meetups, and even when it's at like a dungeon event or someone's private house party, it's usually very lovely conversation.
Do you ever find because obviously this is a sexual fantasy, regardless of whether or not it is intercourse or just play. Yeah. But do you ever find that people will typically go and see whether or not they work well together by having vanilla sex before they jump into the whole dom bloody
it's really funny. Sex isn't a big part of it. Sex is a part of it. I shouldn't say that, but it's not the main part of it. So a lot of times it's a lot of, petting and playing with the other person. And typically a dom will make a sub do things or feel a certain way or use a certain experience on them to get themselves off. It's very much a thing of, yes, the dom takes it out, but definitely does things to the sub to get himself off, and that's how he gets his gratification. And he also gets it from having someone who's so submissive to them. But typically when a scene finishes, there's what's called the term is aftercare, where you would typically, after a scene is finished, whether privately or in public at an event, you would go and sit with your sub and dom, and you would just be by yourselves for quite some time, and you would just be cuddling or holding each other or talking about things. It's a very much a trustworthy thing. But getting into it, when you find a new partner or someone you're potentially interested in, you can ask, you can say, I don't know if we're compatible, let's try it out first, I don't know if I'm comfortable with you seeing my whole body, you might not mesh, and that's just what happens. So definitely you can, there's no rule saying you can't.
Yeah, because it's interesting because sex is such a personal thing.
Yes.
Regardless of, like we said, it's
very
full
taboo.
Or...
It's a very taboo thing, sex. Even
it
now.
Is. Well, it's funny that you should say that because it really is.
Which is why, once again, thanks for coming on and having a chat about this.
Yeah. But I don't know much myself about this. I know all about respect and all that sort of stuff. But when you talk about the 50 Shades of Grey books, you're looking at Christian Grey and you think, well, he starts off vanilla and he pops her cherry, and then he goes from popping her cherry over a couple of days to right into it.
Yeah, not even a couple of days. It's literally like the next day.
Yeah. And
so basically, it's his first sip of alcohol and then goes on a bender.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I got from it. Basically, it's okay, that's a jump. Yeah. We'll go for that.
And we've all had our first time, and we all know what that's like.
It's not usually pleasant. No,
and it's probably not as bad for guys as it is for girls.
Probably not. No. There's definitely ways you can go about it. Obviously with enough foreplay, shit's going to be slippery and it won't hurt as much. But the one thing you just said about that is Christian started off vanilla. In the books, Christian was taken in by the woman who was so fondly nicknamed Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
When he was a very young teenager, because he had a very sad story. So in a sense, he was taken advantage of himself. And that's the only way he knew how to express himself was by doing what happened to him to others. Yeah. So that's a very wrong mindset. And having that kind of mindset going into it is actually pretty dangerous, because sometimes you won't listen to the limits. You'll be so caught up in yourself, you won't be caring about another person, and that's pretty dangerous.
Is there sort of like an age limit where, you basically turn people away when it gets to that point?
How do you mean?
Well, how legally, it's 16.
It's strictly 18. Strictly 18 plus. Well, some states in America, it's even 20. Obviously. So
see, that's great, because when you consider the things that can be done or the things that are associated with BDSM,
it's more with what you see. Like, if you let a 16-year-old into one of those events, they're not going to be ready. No matter how much a 16-year-old says they're mature and they're ready for this, and they may have read 50 Shades of Grey and they might watch some really hardcore porn, they're not ready.
No.
Seeing it in person is very confronting.
And being involved in it.
Yeah.
You've got your whips, you've got your...
You have everything. You have whips, paddles, suspension ropes, different kinds of cords, there is so much, and it's not all about what's physically going to be on you, but it's also what's around you. Walking into a venue and seeing a stall of 50 different kinds of whips. You know, you might have the cats, obviously without the blades, but you might have the cat o' nine tails, you might have the single whips, you might have crop whips, you might have, you know, whips with 40 pleathers on them, all laid out beautifully, but that is so intimidating if you're not ready.
Oh, yeah.
I find it hard enough just sitting here with the single whip one thing right
Yeah.
This little whip thing here, I'm just like, that would hurt like a motherfucker. Can you imagine none of those things right now?
That's what I mean, and that's when it becomes dangerous, because you're not experienced enough to know how to use tools properly.
No.
So, you know, any tool can be used to hurt. You can slap someone on the butt with a ruler and it's gonna fucking sting.
Oh, yeah.
You really need to have control. It's not about just going as hard as you can.
Or a tea towel.
Or tea towels. There is a fetish with that. So, you know, there's a fetish for everything, and the people in that community, they're very close knit, and it's quite confronting when you see them outside of it.
Sorry, you go first.
I must admit, the one thing I did respect in the book was when she was talking about butt plugs, and she was getting quite engrossed by these butt plugs.
Yes.
And he sort of says to her, no, we don't start with that, we start with the finger and then we work our way up, and you know, I mean, that I suppose was respectful.
That was pretty much the only thing he respected her with, was that one thing. You know,
because he basically just fucked the shit out of her.
He didn't respect her, he didn't listen to her, but she also fucked up too. She bit off way more than she could chew. He warned her. He repeatedly warned her. Yeah. And she still chased.
That's why basically. The whipping bit at the end of the book really pissed me off. Because I'm like, you fucking signed this. You knew what was going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, well, that's the one thing I didn't understand about that movie was that, well, other than the whole thing, but the fact that she goes, right, show me the worst that can happen. Yeah. He showed her the worst that can happen, and then she packs a sad about it. Yeah. Like, from that's what I saw. It's basically like if I said, Nat, punch me in the face right now, you punch me in the face, and then I pack a shit about it.
So he actually did the right thing in that scene, and I will defend him with that. He asked her, do you remember the safe words? Yeah. And she said yes, and she didn't use them. She knew she was past her limit. She was at her hard limit and beyond, and she didn't say red. Yep.
Well, I think was her own fucking fault.
That's right. And a lot of people look at that like him abusing her, but no, she encouraged that. So that's the one thing that's kind of annoying me, is he asked her, she said yes, she said what it was, and she didn't use it. So.
Well, then in that case, you know,
then that's her fault.
She is just as responsible.
Absolutely. It's a very messy book.
Oh, yeah.
And not every girl who decides to enter the BDSM world is going to find herself a rich millionaire who's going to buy her a laptop and a TV and a car and a...
as Matt said before, that never happens.
But she was more talking about the sex toys.
It does sort of happen. So there are long-term relationships, and it's a very new thing, and I think it might be brought on by the whole 50 Shades of Grey thing, but there is definitely I wouldn't even say new now, because obviously it's been 12 months since 50 Shades was out, but an uprising in people who want to have that fetish, the spoilt, pampered on, bought things fetish. Very rare, and it's very much a selective group of people that does happen to, but you'll quite often find that doms will buy their subs gifts, but it's typically never
not your laptop or the first edition of books and shit.
And one of the higher
voucher there.
And
there you go. Here's the
yeah, like they'll take care of little things, like they might pay your phone bill or something like that, you know. But, you know, one of the things that doms give subs is typically a collar, and that might sound really bizarre, but some people consider that as highly as being engaged or married in the BDSM scene. So if you see someone and they're wearing a collar, they are a no-go zone most of the time. It's become a little bit bizarre with the whole furry situation, because people just don a collar and go outside and whatever, and there's no meaning behind it. But you can find some really beautiful collars that people have actually bought in their lifetime dom subs, and they will wear that collar to events very proudly, like in a wedding ring. So,
and are those people like? Do you find that people who are married go and join these with somebody other than their significant other?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a lot of swingers who do attend BDSM meets, and they're usually typically they always go as a duo, but you will find the ones that will separate, and they will go into their own scenes or groups or meshes and cliques, and they will go and do their own thing, and then once they get home, it's just them again. So, absolutely, yeah.
I have friends who are swingers, but we won't go into that.
Yeah,
I do, but I don't want to talk about that right
now.
No.
Okay, we would turn the mic off. Do I know them?
No.
Alright, never mind then.
No, and in fact I think...
Invite them to the wedding and make it a little bit different.
I think they're into the BDSM scene in New Zealand, so...
Yeah. It's a really nice scene, and, you know, seeing people outside of it, you just have a really nice smile at them, and...
It's very social.
Yeah, well, that's
It
right.
is.
Yeah. So, I'm sure we've covered this off numerous times, but so from someone who's had that background and everything else like that, the appeal of 50 Shades of Grey to a quote-unquote normal